And this was the biggest pain point that he pointed to throughout his entire hospital stay, being treated for pancreatic cancer. So we thought there must be a better way of sampling blood in the hospitals that we don't have to disturb the patient every hour and really impede their recovery. And so when we looked at the ways that blood is sampled in hospital settings, we found 3 main methods. So the first is the lancet finger stick, and this is what I just mentioned with our clinical advisor's father. This is, just a small needle used at the fingertip, but it samples peripheral blood, which, as you can imagine, in ICU patients is not going to be a very active accurate source of their metabolic activity. It's also painful and impedes patient sleep. The next is venipuncture, which I'm sure you're all aware of. This is when you insert a needle into a patient's vein. However, this is really unavailable for frequent blood draws because it has a lot of trauma to the patient vein, which has about $180 million in complications to the U.S. healthcare system annually, and also risk of Sharps injury, so needle stick injuries to the nurses and the patients, and the complication costs due to that. And the last is central IV sampling. So if you have a patient who's very sick, they might have a central line in their subclavian vein or another large vein inserted surgically and used to infuse different drugs. They can also draw blood from this. However, a nurse literally has to throw away 5 to 10 mils of the first blood that he or she draws due to potential sample contamination. So the sample contamination can cost a lot due to misdiagnoses and analytic tests. And also, it wastes the patient's blood and actually leads to hospital-acquired anemia. And some estimates we found state that this rate can be as high as 80% of hospital patients who get hospital-acquired anemia. So this wasted blood is a huge issue for patient outcomes. And lastly, the risk of central venous catheter blood-related infections is large as well, and this is actually the biggest cost to the system, about $1.6 billion in the U.S. annually, treating these bloodstream infections due to multiple draws from a central line because it is such a central source. So when we looked at all these ways of sampling blood in the hospitals and we're shadowing, we realized that there's got to be a better way of doing this, and we were actually inspired by nature. So has anyone here ever been bit by a mosquito? Maybe not as much here on the West Coast, but from Virginia, where I'm from, there's a lot of them. So inspired by the mosquito, we created the HemoDrop, which is a 2-part system for blood sampling in the hospitals. And basically, how mosquito works, right? It lands on your arm and can withdraw blood from your arm without you basically even knowing it was there. And so the HemoDrop has 2 parts. The first is an indwelling, basically peripheral venous catheter. And this is really similar to any peripheral venous catheter that's on the market today. So it fits into existing nursing workflows. A nurse can insert it just the way they're familiar with existing butterfly needles or catheters that would go in a vein in your arm. And secondly, whenever a nurse or phlebotomist needs to draw a blood sample, they can insert the disposable sampling stick up here on the right. This is like the mosquito's proboscis or nose. So basically it gets inserted through the indwelling port and with a direct access to the patient's venous blood. So it's a direct access to blood, it doesn't waste much blood, and you get access directly to the venous source. And so as you can see here, we've gone through many iterations. We've been working on this for about 2 years now. First, we started cutting up different parts of catheters, as you can see over there, but with extensive nursing feedback to the end users of our device and getting better at CAD, we've come up with our current iteration. So how is the HemoDrop better than what's out there today? First, it improves patient satisfaction. So we're not waking up patients through the night to get blood. Once you get this initial catheter inserted, you can withdraw blood from it whenever you want with no additional needle sticks. And this is actually incentivized with the Affordable Care Act now. Hospitals get a higher reimbursement rate with better patient satisfaction scores. Next, we're getting more accurate samples in 2 ways. First, we're not drawing from a fingertip source. So in many sick patients, this is, like I said, an inaccurate source metabolically. It's from a venous source in the patient's arm or wherever an available vein is found. And secondly, there's nothing else being infused through this catheter. So there's no risk of drug contamination or anything else. Next, we reduce the risk. We're not wasting any blood. We have a direct source to blood. And so we don't have to throw away any blood being drawn from this test. And reduce Sharp-related injuries because we're not sticking the patient every time we need a sample, just the first time. And lastly, we have faster draw times. We fit into existing nursing workflow. They already know how to insert a catheter like this. And anytime they need a sample, again, like I said, they don't need to go through this whole process of sticking and the patient again. So how do we stack up against our competitors? I've already talked about the 3 major other ways blood is sampled in the hospitals. And I've also included the SafeSet and the VAMP systems, which are 2 different companies who created devices specifically to target this problem. But no one really hits all the pain points that we do. And we're also very encouraged by market size. So patients populations that we'd like to target first are ICU patients, 5 million in the United States annually, and these patients need frequent blood sampling. They also have difficult veins. So once you get this venous access and you need frequent blood draws, they're an ideal patient population that would benefit from this device. Next are pediatric patients. They have maybe difficult to access veins. And lastly, dialysis patients who need very frequent blood sampling when they are in the hospital for different tests. And we're also very encouraged by the growth of the blood diagnostics market, which is growing at about a 5% compounded annual growth rate right now. So where are we right now? So we are currently working with a third-party prototyping company to make medical-grade prototypes of our device. It's going through modular testing of the different components to make sure everything is optimized, and we should have a final prototype by August with this company. And at that point, we'll file any additional IP that we've generated, but we've already filed a patent through the USPTO, actually 2 patents back in November, and we filed a PCT earlier this year, so we'll plan on international filings within the next year or so. We may file additional patents for any IP generated this summer. For regulatory concerns, we've brought on a regulatory consultant. However, we believe we have a pretty good path through the FDA. We are a Class 2 medical device with a peripheral IV catheter. We've already identified other predicate devices to which we will claim substantial equivalence for greater equivalence when you're going through the 510K pathway, if you are familiar with it. Lastly, commercialization and funding. Basically, we have 2 strategies of how we're going to bring this device to market. The first is we can license it to a larger medical device manufacturing company. And what this will do is it will allow us to leverage the larger distribution chains and manufacturing expertise of a larger medical device company while allowing us to focus on our core competencies in medical device design. However, if we cannot find a strategic partner who's willing to license our device, we also have the, machinery in place to bring this device to market. The prototyping company we're currently working with has the ability to scale up, at least for initial manufacturing, has all the ISO standards in place needed to do FDA level testing for an FDA regulatory filing. And our fundraising I'll talk about in a second, but it would depend on which path to market we decide to take. So the team, my name's Jessica, I'm a PhD student at UCSD. My other 3 teammates, Peter, Tim, and Andrew, couldn't be here today. They all are actually back in Virginia, which is where we started this company at the University of Virginia. The 3 of us as undergrads in biomedical engineering, and this is when we were shadowing hours and hours in hospital. Then we teamed up with Peter, who just got his MBA in May, brings the project management expertise to the team, and the 3 of us bring sort of the CAD and medical device design expertise. And we wouldn't be where we are today without our clinical advisors and our industry advisors. Our clinical advisors have over 125 years of combined experience in the relevant field, and actually 2 of them advise the FDA on blood sampling technology. So they had a lot of expertise in this specific field when we were coming up with the ideas for our project. And our nurse advisor, Beth Pitar, has been crucial for, like I said, the end user experience testing, because the nurses are the end users of our device. And our industry advisors have over 30 years of combined experience in the health, angel investing, and venture field, and so they've been really invaluable getting our business plan up and off the ground. So where are we right now? We've raised over $130,000 in seed capital and over $50,000 through different grants and competitions like this one. We're at a current monthly burn rate of about $12,000, mostly for product development, and we were getting our office action settled with USPTO a couple months back. We need about $1.5 million to bring this device to market. This includes finalizing product development and testing we need to bring our device with an FDA submission. And we expect to break even within 2 to 3 years with just 5% of this initial ICU patient population. So just the first patient population that I was mentioning earlier. So again, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Jessica, and we are ProVazo.
Good presentation. So I'm an internal medicine doctor by training. So when I used to pull blood from catheters that were in their veins and used to clot all the time, so they weren't supposed to. How do you address that with your device?
Right, so the main proprietary component of our device is actually a valve at the tip of the indwelling catheter. So this will prevent any blood flow from actually coming up into the catheter, which is why we don't have to infuse with saline or any heparin locks. And it should also prevent any microbial biofilms forming inside the catheter, so there shouldn't be any blood getting up inside the indwelling component. It just enters the sampling stick, which is a disposable component committee of nurses that they bring in to test new devices when they're thinking about bringing them into hospitals. So she has a lot of experience on what the hospitals take, when they don't take. We've talked to purchasing coordinators as well. The key is going to be these early adopter nurses who have worked with our device and see its benefits to patients. We also believe the cost benefits of reducing hospital-acquired anemia and central line related infections from central lines will help incentivize hospitals. Yeah, so the early adopter is looking at university hospitals. That'll be our best bet. And oh, just another thing. I didn't have any of the pricing details up here, but the pricing of our catheter is going to be similar to current peripheral IV catheters that are on the market. So it'll be priced similarly to things that are already on the market. It'll be a little bit more because of some of the design components in our device, but we think heading at a similar price point and all the blood sampling procedures already being covered under existing CPT codes will be pretty much easy adoption for hospitals when considering applying their device.
But you can't infuse through it.
No, this is just dedicated blood sampling catheter. So basically avoids any other blood sampling that you'd be doing from other catheters.
So my question is actually going to be about pricing. So you partially answered it. What is the projected unit cost to manufacture one of these devices, and what's your margin per device?
So I don't know that off the top of my head. So I don't want to beat around the bush. I believe with our current medical grade prototype, I want to say like 50% margin, but that might be a little off. And so it definitely costs more than, for example, the Lancet finger stick, right? This is like costs like 10 cents per hospital to buy in bulk. So it'll be more. It'll be priced around the current peripheral IV catheters, which if you buy it from Becton Dickinson is about $4 to $5. So around that price range. So.
Okay, and then I guess my other question is, what you may have already said this, in your first clinical trial with the device, what is the patient population that you're thinking about going into? Is the ICU patients?
Yes. Well, so we actually don't think we need a clinical trial based on discussions we've had with our regulatory consultants because it is a class 2 device and there are substantially equivalent devices already out there. So it's a 510(k) pathway, which is relatively minimal with bench testing, which our prototyping facility already has the facilities and the ISO standards in place to already complete this testing. So we shouldn't have to. However, we still will do sort of user experience testing with nurses, this committee that I was mentioning earlier with our nursing advisor, just so we can get user experience inputs. Because again, we want it to be easy for the nurses to use and to fit into their existing workflows. So that'll be probably our own, and it's not a clinical trial, it's more of a user experience trial, but that'll be our path.
And that second piece that comes with it, does each one come with that piece?
It's disposable. So it'll be a second modular component, like razor blade kind of thing.
And how long does each one? Do you use it for that patient, or do you use it for?
So the indwelling catheter is used for the current peripheral IV catheters can stay in a patient for up to 3 days out. So that's how long that'll stay in. The disposable sampling stick is only used for each sample, and it actually has, I don't know if you noticed, I forgot to mention it, but a lure lock mechanism on the end, so it can be connected to any other container that could contain blood, so you can adapt it to a variety of different blood tests, whether you need just a drop for a glucose test or a larger vial for like a YSI test or any other test that you need a larger blood volume.
So circling back to the first question on how the device actually works, so you don't have a clotting problem. So the sampling stick goes all the way through the port, down the catheter, and sticks right into the vein.
Yes.
As you pull it out, isn't there going to be a little bit of blood deposited back on that pathway that could be problematic from an infection
So that's
standpoint?
the testing right now we're doing with the valve on the tip. But the idea is that no, there wouldn't be, and so far we're seeing good results, but that is definitely a good point. So that's one of the design considerations that we've been looking at.
So kind of one critical path for success here might be developing relationships with big hospital chains. Do you have any of those yet? If so, describe where you're at with them.
Sure. So obviously we started at the University of Virginia healthcare system, which is just one hospital in Charlottesville, Virginia. However, we have relationships with the Inova system in Northern Virginia. So this is a chain of about 5 hospitals in the DC investments we've been making so far, but that's something to expand on if we are going to bring it to market. However, another thing we've been considering is talking to the distributors, so like Cardinal Health. Our goal would ultimately be to sell to them because they're actually the ones who sell to the hospitals. So to get our early adopters, yes, we need to look at hospitals, but for actually distributing our device on a larger scale, we need to talk to the Cardinal Healths of the industry. So these larger players that actually sell in bulk to the hospitals. That's where we would want to go next. And to answer your question, no, we don't have any connections there yet, but that would be the next step.
One quick question is, what would be your exit strategy for early investors?
Okay, so this was, I guess, the two commercialization strategies I was talking about earlier. So the first one would be to license our device to a larger medical device manufacturer. So this would be like a Becton Dickinson